How you doing?
Good, how are you?
Okay.
Lotus is good.
Lotus is doing okay.
Yeah, that's Lotus. It's my Labrador.
Good evening, everybody. We're here for round 2.
Round 2.
It's like a boxing match, isn't it?
It does
Are
seem
you
that
getting
way.
tired yet?
I'm exhausted. I can't.
Well, I guess we wouldn't have to if things were going the way we would hoped.
Yeah?
You know? Again, we're just doing this. The whole purpose of me coming out here and doing this and everything is to correct some things that are just falsely stated. Things that, you know, if people don't get the right answers, if people don't hear the truth,
Right.
at the end of all of this, they're going to make a decision, but it's going to be based on false information. So if it's based on false information, how do they come up with the truth?
Well, and it's the smallest details, too.
But those are the ones that matter.
Like, hey, Mo, what does Meme stand for?
Well, you know, Meme stands for grandmother.
It does, doesn't it?
It does.
Yeah. What was our Meme's name?
Irene.
Yeah.
Irene. Yes. Just little details. Like details of when my dad got remarried.
Oh, when he got married to Robin?
Yeah, it was said that he got married a year after my mom disappeared. But that's not when he got remarried.
No, didn't he wait until after she was found?
Yeah, it was after she was found.
Yeah.
And it was, I believe it was a year after she was found. So, you know, things like that matter.
Yeah,
Because
do you know
if
the
you
date?
think...
Do you know the date that they got married?
I always confuse their date of marriage with Robin's birthday. So one of them is the 21st of May, and one of them is the 23rd of May.
Okay.
Go ahead and ask me which one.
Doesn't really matter, right?
Doesn't matter. Because if I get it wrong, then I'm giving false information.
Yeah.
But, you know, if you are told that my dad remarried just a year after my mom disappeared, then you would start to form one opinion. But if you hear that he didn't remarry till a year after they found her body and he knew she was dead and not coming home, that paints a different picture.
Right, but being married and moving her in is a whole different story.
I didn't say they didn't live together. You know,
no offense.
Truth is truth. I mean, we still can't get an understanding as to when they met. I mean, some people say they met before my mom disappeared. Some say it was... Robin says 2 weeks after she disappeared.
I was going to say, from the horse's mouth.
I just don't have that answer. So I can't give you correct information one way or the other because I don't have it.
Yeah.
You know? But the small details matter.
They do.
And that's, you know, the last... what podcast was it? Stacy, my sister, your cousin, was talking on the podcast. And she gives a very detailed description of what took place the day my mother died. The day she says my mother died. And very descriptive, right down to she remembers what she was wearing, what other people were wearing, what they smelled like. Things that... Remember, she's 2 years old.
2.5, almost 3.
2.5, but she talks like she understands even time frames. You know, they carried her down to the car. They did this. How did they know they didn't carry her down to an ambulance or down to get fresh air or, you know, I mean, it just, things like that. You know, you get lost in details, which may or may not be true details.
Sorry.
So, Lotus just wants to be famous.
She just, you know.
10 minutes of fame, right? So, growing up with Stacy, you know, take this as you will. I don't believe she's always been a fan of the truth. But can I prove everything that I say she wasn't telling the truth on? I can't. But there are certain things that.
So I'm glad that I'm glad that you say that if you can't prove something true or false, that you're not gonna come out and say it, which I respect that. You know what I mean?
Well,
and I feel the same way. I mean, nobody can say 100% what is right and what is wrong. So to be slinging mud back and forth at people,
right,
you know
that's
what
not
I mean?
going to accomplish anything.
Yeah.
One thing I can say I don't believe is that I don't believe my dad molested her. I'm not going to get into why I don't believe he did, because, like you said, mudslinging back and forth gets us nowhere.
Okay.
But I have strong feelings on that. But we won't get into that. She was molested by Armin Rillard. The court says she was. Armin went to jail for that crime. I don't believe for a moment that my dad gave Stacy to Armin for molestation. For many reasons. First of all, Armin was convicted of not only molesting Stacy, but he was a pedophile. He was convicted of molesting his own children, other cousins of ours.
Even RJ, right?
Even Roberta, RJ.
Even Roberta. And how old would Roberta have been at that age?
Just a couple years old.
Yeah, so, and something that strikes me as odd is that when we were younger, we weren't allowed to actually hang out with Robin's children. Like, it was never allowed. Like, Robin didn't let anybody really near the younger kids. So it surprises me to hear that Roberta would be included in that, because, you know what I mean? Like,
well, I wasn't there. So, I can't tell you one way or the other why, if it happened, she was included in it. And
right.
Then the court found sufficient evidence to convict him on that account.
Right.
So, but on the other hand, if you look at, did my father give his children to Armin for that purpose? A man looking at life in prison certainly would have said...
He definitely would have turned over and been
he would have said, wait a minute,
hold on,
I know what I did, but let me tell you another story.
Right, let me tell you what he did.
I mean, my father was the one that turned him in to send him to prison for the rest of his life. You certainly think the guy would have come back and said, oh, wait a minute, let me tell you a story.
Right.
And I think my dad would have been cellmates with him or something,
Right, but that doesn't really pertain to, I mean...
But again, Stacy tells a story about how she was dropped off by my dad. How one of her brothers was told by my dad to pack her bags, and then my dad took her down to Hartford and dropped her off on the streets of Hartford at 11 years old, and said, "There's a woman shelter down the road. Good luck." And the gentleman doing the podcast states how Stacy had to
it said 12,
survive.
So can we at least get our facts right?
I thought he said 11.
I think he said 12, but
either way, he said Stacy had to survive the next 10 years or so on the streets of Hartford. But that's not true.
No.
I
don't think Stacy portrayed it that way either, because and I really don't. I think that was the editing that happened.
And it could be, and we're going to get into that. We're going to get into some.
But I don't believe that Stacy said it in that manner, because you know what I mean. She did go to high school with you guys.
Right.
She was here for birthday parties. She was. So she would not. It was edited to make it seem.
Right.
That way, and that she had left Connecticut and she was never returning for these reasons.
Right, and we won't get into why she's not in Connecticut.
Right, because that's none of our business. I mean, it's great that Stacy is doing amazing where she is, correct?
Yeah,
I mean, she's doing great.
She seems to be
we love
happy
her.
with what she's got going on. So
right, so that's wonderful. But she didn't leave Connecticut because of these cases. And yet again, another problem of editing. Like,
right.
You know what I mean?
And I just, the reason I was bringing that up was, like you said, she did go to high school with us. And
Right.
I would know that because we were in passing in the halls one day, and she said something to me, and I hit her in the shoulder.
Well, I would hope you would know either way if you went to high school with your
and
sister.
I got suspended for a week.
Right.
And I thought that was wrong. It's my sister.
I know.
I mean, come on. But anyway, I want to switch gears a little bit.
Yeah.
Sorry,
it's late. I'm drinking my coffee. I got
we spent time talking about my dad, talking about my mom, and things that have gotten portrayed as facts that weren't facts. But that's my mom's case isn't what started all this.
It's not.
You didn't set out to solve my mom's case.
No.
You actually had no interest in my mom's case.
I didn't. I really.
So what actually started all this, and how did we get to where we're at? If you could sum that up for us.
So.
Or do we need another podcast for that?
I know. Oh God.
At least another pot of coffee.
Yeah, at least another pot of coffee. But so my dad, in my family, we've talked about Renee. We've, she was talked about a little bit here and there. I had known about her. But so come 2015, I was teaching my dad something on the computer, probably to do with email or whatever,
You know how the LaRosa guys were with turning on computers.
Oh God. Yeah. So, and I could go into, but anyway, so I was teaching my dad, and he said, you'd be surprised these days. I'm surprised in today's, this day and age that we can't find Renee. And I was like, well, Dad, what's her information? And I plugged her into the computer, and I showed him. I said, we can look. And he's like, oh, okay. And he began to tell me a little bit of the story, and I went home. And then, of course, my wild dreams came into factor about everything. But anyway, so I put that aside, and I started looking at Jane Doe's. And I started looking on the internet to see if I could find her still alive. Because, right, everybody's on the computer these days. I mean, I can find anybody I want. Just plug them in. We're good.
Just put a name in there.
I found a couple people, one in Pennsylvania, one in California, and so I would take them and I would show pictures to the family, and could this possibly be it? No. I started talking to the family members, and that's just when all hell broke loose. I didn't mean for this to happen. I asked about Renee, and we kept on getting into your mom. And then I would ask about Renee, and we would get into another little girl. Well, you do know that Nathan was a pedophile. You do know that Nathan was kind of stalking Lisa, right? You do know that he was a part of the search party, correct? And it was just one story after another and I was, all right, guys, but what about Renee?
So every avenue you checked on for Renee pointed you to something else.
I called Aunt Claudette, and Aunt Claudette told me that Nathan was a part of the search party. I called Aunt Debbie, and Aunt Debbie told me this story about the dog, about her dog getting hit when they lived on Regan Road. And Lisa White came over to the house and told her, hey, your dog got hit, but of course Nathan was lurking and had always been watching Lisa. And I don't know why Aunt Debbie told me that story, because I was trying to get information about Renee. As far as I could get is that she loved to sing. She ran away. She sang at Biganti's in Villa Rose. And that was about it. I would ask them, what type of personality did she have? And they didn't really answer me. They would go back into a story. Well, I had a dream about, and this is Aunt Kathy, I had a dream, and I don't know if you remember this or not, about a guy in a red and black flannel.
Mm-hmm.
And it was right after the little one went missing. And I was like, Aunt Kathy, did you ever say anything? And she said, well, no, I just thought it was Barry. But you didn't say anything. Do you remember being in that car that day? And Aunt Kathy said to us, I want to go up. So we brought her up. And do you remember that whole conversation?
Yep. As far as flannels go, I mean, flannels were popular back then.
I like my flannels.
Yeah, but they were really popular.
Were they?
Oh yeah, I mean every guy wore them. I mean, even through the '80s. I mean, I remember growing up wearing a T-shirt underneath one, and that was just kind of what we wore in the fall time, and early spring and things like that.
Right.
But you talk about how they would divert every time you'd ask about Renee, you'd hear a story about Nathan.
Mm-hmm.
But nobody's interested in Nathan.
No, because
in fact, not to cut you off, but your father gets interviewed in the podcast.
He does.
And I guess he was asked a question about what could have happened, to Renee, and he said, well, I hope nothing bad happened to her, but I remember what your father said. But if something bad did happen to her, it would have been my brother Junior.
Mm-hmm.
He said, I don't believe for a minute my brother Bob would have done anything, but my brother Junior would have.
Right.
But yet still, nobody looks to Nathan.
Right. And now the reason why I went to the state police, and I got a hold of Officer Gibbons, and what a godsend he was. I mean, I have respect for this man because he actually helped. He wanted to help. He listened. He took all the information. But I went to him because all of these stories, he tried to kill his commanding officer. He was in prison. He raped all the sister or the aunts. He all this stuff, and so go look, right? Just look. And they could never move past your mother.
No, and in fact, everything that people talk about Nathan, it gets turned around and put on my dad.
Right.
Which I can't quite understand that.
Right.
In fact, one gentleman wrote a book on all of this, and even put my dad as the oldest son.
Right.
Which would have been who? Nathan.
And I know there's all different, and the confusing part, okay, to all of this is they have so many different names because your father is Bob.
Right.
Right? Bob to the family. Like it would be Uncle Bob, or you know what I mean? To my dad, it would be Bob. People that don't know him, it's Robert. Right? But to Barry Prentice, it is Bobby.
Well, it's funny that you mentioned that.
Yeah.
It's funny that you mentioned Bobby.
Mm.
As I was listening this morning, I heard a statement from you. And we're going to go back to editing here for a minute. I heard a statement for you saying that Uncle Bobby was a dangerous man. But I've heard that statement before.
It was a conversation.
So tell me where I've heard that before.
Because, first of all, I tell Mo everything. I've told Mo everything since day one. There is not anything in these cases he does not know. He has been down to the police station with me. He has called the police station. Okay, so 99.9% of these stories he's already heard. But anyways, I had talking to Barry, and then I decided to talk to Barry's daughter, your cousin Selena. And Selena came out and told me, well, I heard that Uncle Bobby was a dangerous man because my father told me about a story about them taking a girl off the street. We
haven't been able to find that story, so.
We haven't, but that was where it came from.
Right, but I don't want to throw another story into the mix because we don't even know if that story is even true. But
Right,
so it was my cousin Selena who, in fact, told you about Uncle Bobby being a dangerous man.
Right, so I was relaying
So
what Selena was saying.
But it was edited out so that it made it sound like
But I don't
that
call
was
him,
your statement.
But I don't call him Uncle Bobby,
I know that.
and I don't typically call him Uncle either, especially when these cases occur. And you know that you've talked to me for so
Right.
long. You know what I mean? I don't typically refer to him in these cases as Uncle.
Right.
Because something I have to do is kind of disconnect a little bit to look at the story.
It's usually your dad.
Your dad, right?
So, but I was a little taken back by that statement this morning, and other people listening to it are going to believe that that's your statement.
I know.
That's and if I didn't know otherwise, I would have been calling you this morning screaming at you. But like I said, I've heard that statement before.
Well, and you also know that I don't call him Bobby.
Right.
But you also do know when we started questioning things on how it was done, was I not sent a message stating that would happen?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But just so many irregularities still.
Mm-hmm.
Again, we haven't really touched on Renee at all.
No.
But Renee came from a family of how many kids?
11.
11 kids.
Yeah.
But
I think people take her out and they say 10.
well, that may be,
but they don't count her. And
that may be it. That may be the mathematical equation, because in the story it's told that Nunzio LaRosa and Meme LaRosa had 10 kids.
Yeah.
Meme, I chuckled at that one. Meme LaRosa's Irene.
I chuckled real hard, let me tell you, real hard.
Well, I because her name isn't Meme. It's just what her grandkids call her. But when you hear about how Renee's mother Meme or Bob's mother Meme, it just made me chuckle, because I know the difference,
Well,
So
I'm glad you know the difference.
But,
but
not everybody will.
But simple details that you don't even have to add in there were wrong.
Right. But that's what I'm saying.
He's like, I went to go visit Tina in her raised ranch. Does Tina live in a raised ranch? No. It's a cape.
Is this a cape? Okay.
Yeah, and not a big deal, really. But come on, the stupidest things.
But that's what I say when I say there's, small details matter. If you can't get the little detail right, how do I expect you to get the glaring ones accurate?
Not that I don't want people to know what I live in. However,
you want me to give the address?
I'm sure. Come visit me. I might be in jail pretty soon. Just saying.
Nah, that won't happen.
Oh, really? I can guarantee you, if something does not happen very soon,
well, let's talk about that.
I'm getting myself into some real deep trouble.
Let's talk about that, because you are quite upset over some things.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to give you a chance to rant and a chance to air out some things, but I am going to kind of keep the reins on you, because I don't want you getting in trouble. But you talked about Officer Gibbons being a godsend, and I've talked with him myself, and he's always been very upfront with me, and answered questions and everything.
He was too young to retire. I mean, come on, seriously?
Hey,
we went into the wrong field, let me tell you.
Well, I didn't. But anyway, you feel like the next officers coming in should have contacted the family members of the cases.
Just reach out, They threw this case away the moment I said that I had dreams. And these dreams led me to this land. And I couldn't explain it, and I still can't explain it. And we've talked about these, and, after the fact, you've experienced your own. You've experienced the church bells. You know what I mean? There are
You're still giving me those church bells.
I am giving you the church bells because there's meaning behind those church bells. There just is.
So, But this land, they did dig once on the land.
They did. My father took Officer Gibbons out there and explained to him about this well fort and stuff. And so Officer Gibbons went, and they said it was just like a dumping ground and stuff, which is fine. They keep on saying that 11 wells were searched. Not really. They can say that all they want. There was one there, and then the bag of clothes was taken out up on the other well up there.
Okay.
There was not 11 wells dug. The cadaver dogs, when I was in contact with Officer Gibbons, he did not bring the cadaver dogs there. He brought them to the Gonthier land, to where their house used to sit.
Okay.
Because there was stories of Barry always going out to the backyard, and he would come home, and before he would come into the house, he would go out to the old well.
Well, and of course he worked as a custodian.
He did. A traveling custodian to all the stores, to all the schools.
Right.
So, but I forgot where I was going with this.
The land.
So, Officer Gibbons had gotten a bag of clothes that was pulled out. We had that drought that year.
Yep.
And a bag of clothes was found. He had it in his office. He called me, told me he had it, and showed me. Of course, I wouldn't know what Renee would be wearing because I wasn't alive. My dad later on was shown the clothes and the shoes, and he's like, I don't remember. Maybe he's like, but a lot of people had those shoes. But anyway, so when they brought the cadaver dogs out there back in May, it was the first week of May they brought it up?
May of this year?
Yeah, May of this year.
So we're talking after Officer Gibbons retires.
After Officer Gibbons retires.
He's already brought the dogs out once. They searched areas.
He brought it out to the Gonthiers. They never went out to that land with the dogs.
So then the state cops brought the dogs out a second time.
They did not.
Okay, well, who brought the dogs out then? I'll say it if you don't want to. The gentleman that's doing the podcast, in fact, contacted dogs.
He volunteered.
And volunteered to get the dogs out there. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, I've actually contacted the state police on that.
Mm-hmm.
And I was interested in getting a copy of the report.
They don't have it, do
I
they?
should be able to FOI it.
Mm-hmm.
And they kind of said, what are you talking about? So they don't have record of this report. They don't have records of the dogs going out. So go ahead. The dogs went out in May, right?
Mm-hmm.
So from May to now, we haven't. What have we done?
Nothing. They staked it off. They took pictures. I was told that one of the dogs, that the clothes were found in that well. It was springtime, so it was filled with water. The dog jumped into the water, drank the water, got back out, went around the land. Where we put the memorial, he said nothing. There was nothing there. But on the other side, there was 22 spots of interest, right? But there was one spot where the dog laid down and dug. Now he said, I'm not quite sure because, there's 2 dogs out there and only one did it. But I thought you only needed one to do it. Well, the next step is we're going to go to the state, the state police. We're going to get more dogs out there and we'll figure it out. The coronavirus hit. So, of course, everything's on hold, which is fine. And I understand that. But 8 months later, I didn't know dogs got coronavirus. And I didn't.
Pretty sure dead people don't have it.
I'm pretty sure dead people don't have it.
So if there's anybody buried in the ground there, they're pretty safe.
And I got a report, well, we can't do it, the water's poison, and the dog, Make any excuse you want. This is utterly ridiculous to make families wait this long. When you voluntarily got the dogs, you said, let me be the hero, let me bring the dogs out. First of all, what? Okay, so then move on it. Don't tell me that you're going to do something and then lie right to my face, because that's not going to fly.
Well, you've actually been told several times by different people that we're going to dig certain areas.
Mm-hmm.
You dealt with that going into last winter. And then the winter hit. Now the ground's too hard. We'll wait for spring. Spring came. No, we're not going to do it. And now the cadaver dogs go out, find areas of interest. Oh, we're going to do it. But
No.
Here we are. We're coming up to winter again.
Mo, they came to my house. Officer Gibbons, Officer Hathaway, and some really cute cop that sat in this chair, actually. And, but anyways, they came to my house. And they sat here and they recorded Barry Prentice. They recorded him talking to me, telling me about, the wells and about the basement and the house. And, he went on and on and on. And they took 1.5 to 2 years to get over there to talk to him. And then they said they outruled him as a suspect. Really? Really? So somebody says to you, all right, so if anything happened to these girls, they're in this area. You just go out and the well's right here and you go, about 20 yards back from the well. This is on recording, Mo. 3 years ago, on recording. And you couldn't, it cost money to walk out to land. They did. They went out to the other well, right? They stuck a camera down it. They decided to run their mouths about me, and this I know for a fact, and they walked away. They said, nope, can't get into it. That's it. And they walked away. And that was their idea of searching.
So I'd be interested to know why we're not doing anything.
Because the state doesn't have any money.
Well, I know the state's broke. I get that. But
are you guys a Republican state?
No.
Really?
Yeah, we've been run by Democrats for 34 years.
Well, that just doesn't.
They're bleeding us dry.
We won't go there, but okay.
Yeah, we are.
Okay.
But we'll save the politics, because
But so the story goes, there's no money. Now I've offered to do fundraisers. I have offered to pay for it. I have offered to dig it by hand my freaking self.
Well, with your shoulder, you really shouldn't do that.
Nope. But I have a husband and 3 boys that would be more than willing to help me, okay?
But there should be money there somewhere, because there's reward money that hasn't been spent.
Don't even get me started on that reward money.